Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me?
Not a game. We talking about practice.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another edition of the Sports Report Podcast. This is a very special edition of the Sports Report Podcast. We got Kelsey Nicole Nelson coming on with us, award-winning host and reporter. Should be on with us in a few minutes. Let me let her know. All right. So let me go ahead and bring my man. Now he was knocked out last night. He couldn't make it last night, but I have him here today. My man Ando is here. Ando, what's up, man? How you doing?
Yo, you know what they say, better late than never to the party. Am I right? So yeah, I mean, I'm here. I'm ready to rock it and roll it, man. Got a very special guest on. You lead the way, man. Let's do it.
All right. And our special guest, our lady, my good friend, award-winning host and reporter, my sports buddy, as I used to call her back in the day. Kelsey Nicole Nelson is with us. What's up?
Hello, how are you, fellas? Happy Tuesday. My apologies for delay. One of those crazy days where it's been back to back.
You good? It's all good. It happens to everybody. It's gonna happen to me and Ando. So yeah, it's all good.
What, me? Never, man.
All the time, man.
All the time.
All right. Kelsey, I do want to go ahead and again thank you for coming on the show. We do appreciate that.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts about the title game last night?
My gosh, obviously I love college hoops, and had a chance to, go to a school in Maryland where I got to see basketball at a top level. I thought, honestly, the game wasn't as interesting as the women's game, but it was exciting to see. It was exciting to see UConn dominate in the fashion they were, because the storyline heading into the game was Zach Edey and how they're going to contain Zach. How are they going to contain Zach Edey? Will Dan Hurley's greatness, be any competition? So, I think it did live up to Zach Edey can be stopped. I'm sure every team was watching that dang, I wish we would have thought of some of these things. But of course, UConn had a chance to learn from all the other teams. So I thought it was good. I think UConn was able to dominate. The second half is really where they're able to separate, as they have all season. So it was great to see that. But I'll be honest, as an East Coaster, that 9:20 start and watching that game, I had to move around to keep myself awake during that game. But it was good to see UConn, a true blue blood, get that 6th championship title.
Oh yeah. Now you brought up the women's game. South Carolina gets a huge win. Dawn Staley gets a huge win.
Yeah.
Do you think we're to the point of where we can start putting her, maybe not in the conversation of greatest of all time, but can we put her in the conversation of one of the greatest, or does she have to do a little bit more before she can get to that point?
I mean, I think Dawn Staley is goated. I mean, she's one of those people. I mean, again, UConn really and South Carolina, both of these coaches, again, all-star caliber coaches, but we didn't think they could do it again, right? You lose great players. You have to rebuild. We're in this era of NIL and a crazy transfer portal, right? Where anything can happen. And so essentially these two folks were able to do the impossible. I think, what makes Dawn Staley great is, again, she really has put, before pre-Dawn Staley, how many of y'all were talking about the South Carolina women's basketball program, right? I mean, she's put that on the map, and look at the players that she's helped produce. You can watch the WNBA, right, and see these ladies that have come from her lineage, her pipeline. And again, this season, again, going undefeated, which is so hard to do.
It is.
And then able to put that cherry on top, because we know how heartbreaking last season was. I thought it was just so special, because nobody cares if you won undefeated if you don't win the championship, right? It's you're a great regular season team, but you couldn't do when it mattered most. So I think Dawn Staley, again, now that she has 3, and especially to be a Black woman with 3, I do think that matters. she has set a new precedent in a space where, for a long time, there was questions about, people questioning Black women's backgrounds in this. I have had so many conversations of Kelsey, can Dawn Staley, can she be an NBA coach? Should she be the one to take over at Kentucky now that Calipari has finally given us that official video, right, that he's leaving? And I don't know about any other. People trust Dawn Staley, and Dawn Staley they trust. So I honestly, I'm not afraid to call her a GOAT of the game. I think Dawn Staley has honestly cemented herself in that space as a coach, as a player. The fact that she's done it on all levels, as a player, as a coach. Dawn Staley's one of those folks that, it's not fair for the rest of us. She's just incredible, it seems like, in everything that she does, right? She's that person that, no matter what, she's her. And if anything, you're already talking about who can beat South Carolina next year. So she really has set the standard, right, for women's basketball.
Yes.
I think, and what a program, should be. And of course, I know Kim Mulkey, is there, and she has more. But I think what Dawn Staley has built again is a testament, again, with just what she was able to do. And again, who wouldn't want to go to South Carolina at this point? If you're a top player, who wouldn't want to play for Dawn Staley? She's built a dynasty, essentially. South Carolina is a dynasty, and it's going to be hard to knock it down.
I will say with Staley, especially after this 3 or 4 year dominant period she reminds me a lot of Gino from UConn, and then a lot of Pat Summitt from Tennessee. So I think those are three of the. You talk GOAT coaches in women's basketball. She has to be included with at least those two.
Yeah, for sure. Again, like you're talking about, of course, Gino. UConn women's.
He's been coaching forever.
He's done it forever and has won at the top forever. And if anything, I thought this was a true testament, though, to his greatness because of what the cards he was dealt this year.
So
the injuries, the star players.
I will say, being from Iowa, I'm really hoping Caitlin Clark would take it. But there was a part of me that was like, okay, if Caitlin can't beat UConn, and I think
But Angel, can we talk about that game? Because I still don't like that last ball. I'm sorry. I knew you
would bring that up.
I will say this. Watching it as a fan of college basketball, I think it was a bang play. And as a ref, you have to call it as you see it. And if the refs saw it as a man, that could have gone either way. They're going to catch flack for that one way or another. They're going to catch it from Iowa, or they're going to catch it from UConn. As a fan of Iowa, being from Iowa and having family who have gone to Iowa, it's questionable. I'm glad Iowa made it to the championship game. And for probably the better part of 32 minutes, Iowa made it competitive. Absolutely. And I really thought they were going to pull it off.
Sure. I thought that game was so good because, again, UConn had 7 players available, and they were able to take a top team.
Now, my question is on the flip side, would UConn have made it as competitive as Iowa would have? Like UConn versus South Carolina. Because that game would have came down to coaching. And I can't remember Iowa's coach's name, but she did a good job, I think, really preparing, because she did a great job containing everything down low for the better part of the game. And then just like with normal basketball, the more you do it, those players are going to get tired. Those players are going to get in foul trouble. And it kind of drug them down. And that's kind of what killed Iowa in the game.
Yeah, and I think Lisa Blunder, I think she gets so much. I think she deserves credit, right?
Absolutely.
But I think Iowa, would it have been as good of a game? I don't know. But to me, the fact that if UConn were to get there again with such an injured and battered team, my gosh.
And then it comes back to the coaching of Gino versus Dawn Staley.
And then, like you said, 2 GOATs at it. So I think the basketball fan would have been excited. Yes, let's be honest. Of course, Caitlin Clark drew a lot of eyes, so her did matter. But I do think I think people remember Paige Beckers, which made me excited because again, I think people forgot her greatness. And to be fair though, I think Iowa made them so interesting this year was I looked at that UConn game. And even the refereeing in that West Virginia game, right? And those are kind of 2 games I think folks are pointing at. We're, again, not taking anything away from Iowa, but again, people are looking at these teams could have been beat, but my gosh, all of these foul calls.
I think as soon as South Carolina won that game, because I think they did the right job in putting Iowa and UConn in that prime time, who's going to take on South Carolina.
For sure.
I'm going to be the first person to say it after the Sweet 16. I was like, okay, South Carolina, lose at any time. Okay, you won. Lose at any time. Are you going to – no, you're not going to lose. Indiana gave them the best shot. And then at that point, it's kind of like, all right, well, I guess it's going to be Iowa and UConn. But I think I think the women's NCAA tournament did a great job at putting UConn and Iowa in that final spot before the national championship game.
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter if you're an Iowa fan or if you're a UConn fan, if you're a Caitlin Clark fan or a Paige Beckers fan, because that game going up against South Carolina is going to be regarded as one of the best title games of all time. Whether it's because of Dawn versus Gino or it's Caitlin versus South Carolina and how are they going to contain the great Caitlin Clark. I thought, like I said, as an Iowa fan, I'm disappointed they lost, but as a fan of basketball, that was a good game.
It was a win for all of us. And I think, to your point, I think on the men's side, I think that's what made that game less interesting. Because I think so many people were looking at Zach Edey and saying, well, hey, the only reason.
And I will question you here real quick. You said UConn did a great job containing Edey. Edey still had 37 points. Was it that UConn said, okay, we'll let Edey have the shots, but at some point his team has to make them better. And if you take away Edey's 37 points, that accounts for 23 that Purdue had. So I think UConn did the right job of, okay, if we can keep Edey even fairly containable, we can beat them. And that's exactly what UConn did. UConn made it to where, okay, who's your role players? Who's going to step up? And quite frankly, nobody really stepped up. And at the point, Edey's like, hey, I can't do this myself. And that's where UConn kind of built the lead and contained it.
You know, I think this is what I would say. I think I had watched Edey from the time that their first game against Grambling State University, right? All the way through the tournament. I'm sorry, Purdue. Their first Purdue's game from Grambling State all the way through. So all that to say, I think, yes. And Hurley said this. You can't, 7'4", my arm spans up. He's probably like closer to 8 feet, right? There's only so much that you can do against Zach Edey. And Dan Hurley had literally said, like, we know Edey's probably going to have at least 20. You got to make it, and you have to make everybody else shoot. And you could tell they were getting under her skin. I saw the game plan with Dan Hurley. You had to make Edey frustrated, right? I mean, he was visible because literally the only way to beat Edey is for Edey to beat himself because you have no guy that's even close to his size. I mean, he's big, he's tall, he's all of that. And I think that's what UConn was doing in a sense that, well, all of a sudden, like you said, other guys tried to have to step up for Purdue, but they weren't able to have. And I think that was always what was dangerous about Purdue. It's honestly wasn't one of my things about Iowa too. Anytime you have one player that accounts for so much, I mean, let's remember what made Iowa special this year was the games that, you know, Hannah Stuckey and other folks could. Gabby Marshall, who I think does that.
Oh, yes.
Defense. Yes. You know, they were able to step up. And for Purdue, that's what they needed, especially in that second half. Edey also got tired this game, folks. Yep. We did not see Edey go to the bench and be like, I mean, it was a different Edey that we had seen all season. So all that to say, I mean, yes, I think UConn did what they could. Are we ever going to see Edey with a game where he has 10 points? Not at his size in college. Now, NBA, of course, is going to be different because he's going to be playing, you know, if he goes there. And if he's able to play on that level. And if, you know, there's more guys that are close to that level. But all in all, I think you have to give UConn props. Because again, what happens with Zach Edey is every time people try to block him, you get into foul trouble, right? Because the ref is going to see you hit the arm because you're not big enough. You're not strong enough. My thing was like, I would love to see UConn double him. But then what happens when that happens, you know, because I love to see a smaller guard try to get the ball out of his hand. Because if you watch Zach Edey, he loves to back you up to the basket and he loves to do that dribble and he loves to throw that elbow. So I'd love to see a guard try to come in and get that ball, but then you open up another shooter, right? So I understand if you're not wanting to do that. So all in all, like I said, I think the game plan was more mental with UConn. And I think they won that battle. Even Dan Hurley getting on the court and kind of like sizing Edey up. That's a mental thing. I mean, when does a coach do that? Like, so I think, you know, I'm not giving UConn all the props, but I think they did what they could again against a giant of a man who, again, every game it's the same thing. Elbow back, bodies you up. You can't contain him. He gets that easy shot, that easy layup up. And even in the paint, you know, he wasn't able to get the hook shots like he likes. So all in all, I'm giving UConn props for what they did against, again, a man that anybody would have a hard time blocking.
Everybody have issues with that.
Yeah.
Everybody did. I mean, like, what do you do? I mean, like, anytime somebody's 7'4",
oh yeah.
I mean, there's only, and then remember, Edey's not skinny either. Like, he's a big, tall guy.
Dude. Yes, man. That's a big dude.
So your players, and then you remember UConn, you can't have your players get into foul trouble, and Edey can shoot from the line. So, and that's what what happened to a lot of teams. If he doesn't beat you in the paint, he's going to beat you at the foul line.
Yep.
So all of those things I think matter. The men's game again was good because that storyline was there, but still, I think what made South Carolina so good was that again we knew Carmelo Cardoso could dominate, and I think of course starting off it started slow, but that was my problem with Iowa. I didn't think they had any size for her, even though I think Hannah, kind of did what she could. But it was Tessa Johnson. It was these other players that were able to step up and give new life. Chloe Kitts, who I don't think is getting enough props. I think she was able, to make baskets at the right time for South Carolina. And I think that's what makes, and you really see it, like every team says they're unselfish, but that South Carolina team, Pal, I mean, you can really see those girls love each other and that they really are playing unselfish basketball. Oh, it might not be my night. It might be Raven Johnson, but you know what? It's going to be my teammates' night, and I'm going to do everything I can on the defensive side then to help my team win. And I think that's what makes that team so special, is that they really understand what sharing the basketball is. And again, just knowing that it can be anybody's night to help them get to that championship level.
And again, it comes down to coaching. I think Don really put it to the team like, hey, if Cardona isn't scoring, switch it out. Somebody else start taking the shot. And the good news with that is whoever got hot, hey, they're starting to cover me. We'll pass it out, and somebody else will get hot.
Exactly. Dawn, she's amazing.
I do want to say something about the UConn game though. First time since 2007, 2008 that we've had a men's repeat champion. Yeah. Shout out to the 2007, 2008 Florida Gators, who had Joakim Noah drafted by our Chicago Bulls and were coached by Billy Donovan, who's currently coaching the Chicago Bulls. So shout out to that, Will, because I know you and I are Bulls fans and are dreading the play-in tournament.
It's hard being a Bulls fan.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
There's always next year, right, Will? And at least we have the great 23 to always think about.
We need a point guard. That's what we need. Anyway, let me bring up a name, and it might be a little bit of a touchy subject, Kelsey. What's your thoughts and opinions about Angel Reese?
Well, let me say first and foremost, let me give this disclaimer. I'm also a Maryland girl. So, we have that in common. And, I honestly love Angel Reese. I think it's been so hard to see a player that's so confident in herself so early on. It's especially in the world of social media when literally you can go on a computer and see so many nasty things said about you. I think Angel Reese brings a tenacity to basketball in a way that not everybody's used to. Like, so many people say, well, she trash talks. Girls have been trash talking. Where have you been? And I think that she brings that competitive edge to the game. And that's what sports are about. I love playing. So I love bring the trash when I still play pickup. I want that. And I think, she's that in herself. Obviously, Angel Reese, SEC Player of the Year this year. Phenomenal at that. Double queen, able to get it on the boards. And then even, I think even when she played through the injury in the last game, right, that LSU lost, you can see she was in pain, but she knew she had to be there on the court. She really does give her all. I thought she showed maturity when that whole thing happened with Flau'jae Johnson's brother, coming down to the court, Angel Reese going to the end of the bench, knowing, look, I'm injured. My team needs me. I don't need to have any part, of that. And even what she's done, honestly, in the NIL market, I think has set a new standard for women's basketball players. I mean, and announcing her draft going to the draft via Vogue, oh my gosh, Vogue magazine getting involved in the WNBA draft. She has really found a way, I think, to combine sports and popular culture. And it's you can't get enough of her, whether you like her or not, but she's making you watch. And I think that's exciting. And let's be honest, that LSU Iowa match, we didn't think we'd get it back last year, after the whole "you can't see me," we get it back this year. Everybody wants to watch it. And, I think Angel Reese I think she's good for the game. And I appreciate her being unapologetic. I also appreciated her last time when she said, hey, I'm human. I see this stuff. It does hurt, and I do have to stay strong. I think she carries a heavy burden. Again, this is a young athlete, a very young athlete. I think that not everybody fully understands. And so, again, I can talk to it because I know what Maryland hoops culture is. I've seen Baltimore hoops culture up close and personal. I think some people take it oh, she's conceited and cocky. What basketball player is it supposed to be? That's if you're playing sports, you think you're the best when you want a competitive edge. Going back to the mental part of the game, I think she's so great at getting into a player's mind, right? If you mess up, she's right there. That's part of the basketball game. So all in all to say, again, I think Angel Reese, I think she's phenomenal. I think her team is phenomenal. When her merch first came out, I got some of that, which was amazing to be sent that. But again, unapologetic. And I thought that meant so much. And I hear so many young kids that look like her quote her, and I just think about how much she's inspiring a young generation of basketball players to show that you don't have to fit in this cookie cutter, shape or be a cookie cutter person to make it in basketball. So I like it.
Yeah, if everybody played the same way and we're the same kind of concept, it'd get boring after a while. So I compare it to her and Caitlin Clark. If Caitlin Clark is that, I hate using the word good girl. I'm the good girl. I'm the one that, trains. And you got to have somebody to complement that. And I think Angel Reese, especially last year's title game between LSU and Iowa, I think it really, really kind of showed that two sides to every coin kind of deal. And I really appreciate how LSU put their heart into that game against Iowa. And even though they lost, it was, hey, we beat you last year. You got us this year. Good job. Good luck in the rest of the tournament. And you see a lot of those people who are like, man, we're, screw you. You beat. And that again is the culture. I think especially with the SEC, the way that they are built, it's yes, they take every loss hard. Yes, they want to win in every game that they play. But it's that sportsmanship that you really don't see in the rest of the country that you see in the SEC and the ACC, where it's like, hey, you beat us. Good job. Good luck. We're going to get you sometime, but good job and good luck.
Yeah, and and then one thing I would just say too, remember the "you can't see me" thing that Angel Reese got criticized for. Caitlin Clark
started with Caitlin.
And that's what I'm just saying. So I think people are so quick to say, and I get it. Caitlin. I think people see Caitlin and I think, oh, she's just a simple girl. But if you really see Caitlin play, she's done the too small. I mean, she's done all as she should.
She's done all of it.
Should as a great player. But I think Angel is seen, unfortunately, through this different lens. And again, each person's going to have their own opinions, and obviously, again, they're both excelling in the way that they do. I think a lot plays into that. Yes. Even their positions, their backgrounds, where they're from, all of that plays into it. Especially because let's be honest, like anytime somebody plays a big, I think already there's like a aura, right? Like how we talked about Zach Edey. Oh, you're the big, nasty. It's kind of like that. You never say, oh, he's a nice, friendly, center or something like that. Nobody ever says that.
I wonder how many people said that about Shaq in his career. Oh, that's the nice guy on the court.
Like nobody, if you're big, like it's not going to happen to you, unfortunately, right? Just part of being a big person. People are naturally like that. But all in all, to say, like, I think people do need to give Angel, like, again, a little grace, and I think we have to remember they're college athletes. Caitlin, I thought both of them handled their last press conferences very well, giving high praise. Like Caitlin essentially saying, I'm handing it off, like the future of basketball is in good hands. It doesn't just end with me. It's going to continue. And even Angel, giving praise to, again, like you said, an Iowa team that beat them, on the way to the championship, probably knowing at that time too, that was going to be her last game. Of course, she hadn't announced it at that time. So all in all to say, I think both of them are great for the game though, because what are they doing? They're making us go on. They're making us talk. They're making us talk. And I think that's what makes it so exciting because we have storylines. And for a long time, that's what people said women's basketball didn't have, was storylines that they wanted to follow. Angel Reese was making all of us follow college basketball.
And I told it to Will. I think last week on our Sports Reports podcast that I think I was more invested in the women's tournament this year than I was the men's because there was so much more built into it this year.
Well, I mean, think about it. It's no offense to the men, but like there wasn't the storylines. I mean, if anything, I'd say NC State had the best storylines. Love DJ Burns, right? We wanted DJ Horn, but eventually, and of course, once they lost, it kind of ran out, because it's like, dang, well, we really like this team. They were the unlikely 11 seed that, went all the way here, and they have this guy, that it's hard not to love him. Like he's playful and fun, but can play basketball. And the DJ Horn story about playing, for his town and community, I just thought was great. But like, I think other than that, I really wasn't invested in a lot of the men's, storylines. So it was so many. LSU trying to repeat everything that came out with Kim Mulkey, right, during this tournament. Like, I mean, how could you not be, vested? Virginia Tech even, right, and what they were able to do last season into this season. Like, there was just a lot more, I think, riding on the women's tournament.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, let me ask you this. I'm going to go into another side of things. I'm going to go all the way to Southern California. Juju Watkins.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. True freshman, averaging 27 points a game. And the reason why I bring her up is because of this. You got Angel Reese, you got Caitlin Clark, you got her getting there eventually.
Yeah.
How can the WNBA revamp and restructure to pay these ladies what they deserve to be paid? Because they're getting NIL deals right now. Endorsement deals right now, which is more than what the WNBA can currently pay. So how can the WNBA structure themselves to where these ladies can actually be paid what they're worth?
I think honestly, so I think what we're seeing in college sports is what NIL has done. We have so many new players enter the sponsorship market for athletes.
Yes.
Granted, generally before we're not like into spokespeople paying them that much at least, right, for deals. Right. So what I'm saying is, I think the WNBA needs to cap. We saw new sponsors enter the WNBA last season, and I think build upon that. People follow athletes. So meaning, I think this is what's different. And I was just having this conversation with some folks who used to play basketball. Like before you were so tied to, the UConns of the world, or in my case, like the Marylands. But now with NIL and because of transfer portal, it's changing all the time. What does every broadcast say? He previously played at this school and that school and this school and that school. And she previously.
You're right.
It's, you're trying to follow, right? It's so much, it's hard to have the Caitlin Clark stories, right? Of people who are actually staying, at this school. So all that to say, I think, the WNBA, I think there's power in, again, Caitlin's coming. We already see ticket sales going up for Caitlin and everywhere that the Indiana Fever, but I think we need the storylines and I think we need the sponsors. And to get the sponsors, though, it comes to exposure. So meaning I'm hoping the 24 million peak that we just saw, right? And the 18.9 million average that we just saw. I hope sponsors are saying, okay, this is amazing. This is just on the college level. How do we take this to the pro levels? I hope they buy in. I hope, this TV contract is going to give us more exposure to WNBA games because the storylines are there, right? I mean, already we know people are seeing Diana Taurasi as this big, bad, evil person, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Real. Like, look, it's good you did that against 18 to 22-year-olds, but you're playing with grown women who are playing for 144 spots in the WNBA.
Exactly.
And women who have played overseas. And if you've ever seen overseas bat, it's a whole different level.
That's a whole different league.
Right. So all that to say, I think the sponsors, need to follow, which I think will be huge. But I do think people keep saying like the NIL is going to stop after. I don't think so. You can't tell me State Farm is going to be like, Caitlin, we had a great ride. Thanks so much. See you later. No, State Farm wants to get into that professional arena too. And, you see State Farm and what they sponsor. So I think if anything, again, how do we continue that Caitlin Clark storyline? How do we keep the Iowa fans wanting to follow? I think a good example of that is Skylar Diggins-Smith, who went to, of course, Notre Dame. And, Notre Dame fans did continue to follow, I think, her WNBA career. Could it be more? Yes. But this is, again, why we have to buy in. And so hopefully people don't see this as a hot moment, but a true moment, meaning we really need to buy into it. So I think it starts with the sponsors. I think also the WNBA, again, I think somehow, some way they have to, again, cap. So WNBA draft, that sold out in like record minutes this year. Yes. I think I'm hoping for bigger draft locations too in the future, right? Like I know it's in New York now. It's not the biggest space that they're having it in, but like we're about to. Like I want to see big venues. I want to see people be able to continue. Oh, I love Caitlin Clark in college. Let me go now watch her at the WNBA draft, which is being held. I don't know, whatever the big venue is, in whatever city. But all I want to say, and don't give up on the WNBA just yet, folks. I hear some people saying like, oh, why did they do this?
Oh no.
And it's not going to happen. Like I'm telling you, if anything, this is good for the WNBA to latch on to because good players and good storylines don't ever die. Good players and good storylines don't ever die. And as long as their greatness is there, again, people will follow. And remember, the WNBA each year has continued to increase viewership. I know people aren't talking about it like they should, but the WNBA has seen steady increases. And so I think they're also going to be able to capitalize off of this. But biggest thing, everybody thinks it's fans in the seats. No, money comes from sponsorship deals, which come from TV. So again, I think networks have to buy in to the product and know that we just had a great freshman class, right? We talked about Juju and there's so many Johnson. We talked about so many freshmen already. Texas is a school that's being talked about on the college ranks that could maybe having a class that could, make Don Staley be like, my gosh, I need to really wrap it up. So all in all to say, like, I think the WNBA just has to make space. And I think the last thing I'll say is the WNBA expansion is so huge. We need more WNBA franchises, and hopefully we get them at a bigger rate because there's only so many spots. A lot of stars coming out of college. How do we keep them here, right? I want to keep them in WNBA. Could they go play in athletes? Unlimited, maybe. But again, WNBA is where we really want these athletes to go. So also it's important that the money is there to be able to continue to expand this league to get its full glory.
Yep, I agree. Ando, you want to add anything to that?
I'm glad Seattle has the Storm because they really need to bring the Sonics back. So,
oh my gosh! Bringing back so many memories.
Washington State, man. I'm going to support the Sonics until they come back.
We know that story. Story. And
I'm not going to say it because we have Kelsey on the podcast, but you know how I feel about Clay Bennett, so that's all I'm going to say.
Now, I did want to also ask. Caitlin Clark looks like has been given or an offer rather $5 million to paying the big three.
Yeah.
$5 million. Do you think she should take it?
I think people have to remember this. Ice Cube offered $5 million. My first question was, where's the money coming from? So essentially, he's banking on, all the people, if she were to do it, right, that would come, right? It's always easy to talk about a check before you cash it, right? It's always like, don't take that check to the bank just yet.
Not quite yet.
Right? So I think it was smart of Ice Cube, though. If anything, it made Caitlin's stock higher. Would Caitlin be good in the big three? Sure. But I don't think that would do anything for her brand just because of how the league is currently constructed and playing against, guys and, who previously played. I think Caitlin right now is in her prime and needs to go to where that can really expand NFL. But props to Ice Cube on being a businessman and realizing the money.
Seeing that,
right.
having that vision.
I think it's smart for Caitlin, right? She just showed how much she can dominate in college basketball. Why wouldn't she want to compete against the best in the WNBA?
Exactly.
That's how I would look at it.
Exactly. And then associated to the big three. I don't think the big three would do. She would do more for the big three than the big three could do for her.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Unless now, do you see maybe a women's big three?
I think a women's big three honestly would be great, but I think honestly the attention still needs to go to right now expanding the WNBA first.
Yes,
I think we still have so many great players in their prime. Like I know we lost Sue Bird recently, and Sue seems like she could still come back and play. If I'm honest,
I bet she could.
If Sue ever just said, you know what, I want to get back, she still could. But we still have some greats.
Not to take anything away from Sue's broadcasting because she does great on the broadcast. But
love her.
One more year. We
would love it. We would absolutely
watch this. If you watch this, Sue,
one more year. Come on,
please. One more year. One more year.
That's all we want. Sue.
One more.
It's just great. But all that to say, I think a women's big three type thing would be good. But I think especially because again we have Athletes Unlimited that just launched, and that has been another venue for women's basketball players. I think right now you don't. The thing is I think you don't want too many, right? So meaning I think I'd rather focus on the product that we have and growing and expanding that. Before I'm a person that likes quality over quantity. Right?
Agreed. Yeah, to have like 5 or 6 WNBA or WNBA affiliated leagues when one can barely get off the ground. Right. Focus on the one you got, build it up, and when that quality is ready to go, then you can build off on it.
And just remember, build it, and the people will come.
Amen.
You build it, they will come. I do want to move over to the NBA real quick. Playoffs are pretty coming close to ahead. Who are some of your favorite teams in the NBA to win it all? You're in DC.
Nothing to talk about here with the Wizards, second worst team in the league.
But you're not the worst.
Not the worst.
That still goes to Detroit.
Not the worst.
Still goes to Detroit.
Injuries, second worst. Last time a game was full was when LeBron and company was in town.
But at least you guys didn't lose 28 straight games.
That is fair. That's fair.
Fair.
We've had a couple winning streaks, so it's fun. I love going on NBA shows because I'm talking about everywhere, but where I currently am. I will tell you, this year's been interesting, right? So I know everyone's talking about the Celtics and them solidifying their place, but again, I quote Maya Angelou: when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I've seen the Celtics. I know where this is going, and as much as I want to put them, they fooled me once. They won't fool me twice, and I want them to actually win. I really do, but I just still think again they don't have the pieces to kind of get to that point. I'll tell you the team I'm loving right now. I'm not saying they're going to championship, but the Dallas Mavericks to me have been the funnest team to watch right now. I think they're the hottest team. The NBA. You go back to February 5th, they got the 22-7 run. They had that huge overtime victory against Houston. Kelsey is Houston still. I don't care. Irving with the 48 points. Like that was, and I saw Houston play. Let me tell you, I saw them beat. I know it was the Wizards, but still, Houston is a young, talented team. Give Ime Udoka some time.
Yes.
All that to say, I think Dallas, and remember when Kyrie first got there, we were like, ha 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 ha. We tried to tell you that it wasn't going to work with Luka. Well, all of a sudden, look at where we are. Kyrie and Luka, y'all kind of looking good. So I think.
But is it that Kyrie has finally kind of figured out his place as the number 2 instead of being the guy to lead a team? Because when you saw him with Boston and trying to be the guy. The leader. He didn't really fit that role well. And then when he got traded to Dallas, it's kind of like Kyrie's going to be the guy to take over the team. And Luka's like, okay, just assist me when I need it. And then I'll give you the ball.
Scoring leader for a reason.
And the chemistry between Luka and Kyrie have been amazing, especially you said it yourself since February. I just think there is a lot to build off on that Dallas team.
It's so fun. And I think you're right. I think Kyrie has accepted that role. Because, first people are like, how is it going to work with Kyrie and Luka? Like, who's going to be, the person? But it's like they've settled in. And like you said, that chemistry is there. And I don't know, Dallas is one of those teams that make you kind of do this. And that's, again, I'm not saying they're going to win the championship, but they're a fun team, to watch. Because, another team I've been looking at, and I was just on a show talking about it, the Pelicans have been interesting, right? They haven't been good so late. 5 of the last 7 have lost. But everyone's talking about Zion, of course. And we know Zion can be great, right? When he's at his best. And
when he's healthy.
Let's just say the word healthy. When Zion is healthy,
exactly.
That's the most important thing. But, you look at CJ McCollum and what he's been able to do. And, I think Jose Alvarado hasn't been, looked at enough off the bench. I think the Pelicans are an interesting team, but I'll be honest, like the team I'm still looking at, of course, is the Denver Nuggets. It's just, what can you say? Jokic is Jokic, KCP. It just seems like, Michael Porter Jr., it just seems like they're able to do things like when it matters the most.
Yeah.
They're going to be hard to beat. I know the Timberwolves are getting a lot of conversation too, just because Timberwolves right now, clinching and clawing. Karl Anthony Towns coming back healthy.
Yep.
Right.
I think where Denver is going to succeed in the playoffs is obviously that playoff experience that they have. Timberwolves are great. Don't get me wrong, and I'm hearing a lot of hype about it in Iowa. I'm a Bulls fan, so Timberwolves. But I think where the Timberwolves are going to struggle is now they're playing additional games on top of the 82 that they've already played.
Right.
Where Denver last year they won they did win the championship, right? They beat Miami last year, right?
Yep.
Okay. So Denver has that championship mentality that they've been here before. I think that will help them ride out through the playoffs. And don't get me wrong, you said it yourself, Kelsey, that Minnesota is a team that's getting hot when the iron's hot.
Yeah.
But can they withstand? I mean, between them, Denver, OKC, even the Clippers, and then the Mavericks themselves. I mean, it is top heavy.
SGA with OKC.
Considering that we still have 3 games left to play and nobody has clinched home court advantage in the West.
The
that
West
just tells you how
fun. The
it
West
is
fun basketball. Like you said, I think Oklahoma SGA does not get enough credit. I know health is one factor, but he's playing Oklahoma. Let's be honest, not enough people are talking about them. And then I think even with the Timberwolves, though, let's remember that 6th man of the year candidate, right? That's out there because I think the bench and depth do matter. Bench and depth do matter. It's part of the reason why everyone's talking about the Knicks and getting hot, but the Knicks are injured right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm nervous about the Knicks. And I don't care if Jalen Brunson, keeps going off. We know what we're going to get from Jalen Brunson, but again, it's team basketball in the NBA when you think about these series. So I think it's the same thing for the Bucks. I think the Bucks are good, but obviously they're great. But the Bucks just had this meeting, right? They're trying to figure out what's going on with the chemistry. And let's remember, I think the biggest question with the Bucks is can they close out those close games? There's a lot of questions. Like Doc Rivers, can he do it? And then who do they bring in to close out close games? It was supposed to be Dame time, right? Everybody said we're bringing in Dame time to make Dame time in Milwaukee, but we've seen them struggling now. We know the playoffs.
Yes.
So again, all in all to say, I think the Clippers kind of I said the Clippers. I think the Nuggets have to be your high team. The Clippers are also interesting though. I'm watching health. Yep.
I
think we always say that about the Clippers, right? Like every time you want to believe in them, but all in all to say, I think Paul George does deserve a lot more credit, than he's getting. But the Clippers got another team I think I fully can't believe in because I just something always falters. And like I said, I think the health aspect does scare me with the Clippers. So all in all, I think Denver is still going to be hard to beat. The West is so much fun basketball. The East is going to be a little bit more interesting, to see who. Cleveland is another team I like watching, right?
Yeah.
So
Donovan Mitchell. Yep.
I'm looking at questions about the future of Cleveland even. So is there time to win now? Because we're talking about Donovan Mitchell and maybe opting out the contract. And it's a lot of questions, but this is why basketball is fun.
Yeah, I am looking at the standings right now, Will, for the East. Obviously, Boston, 62 wins. They've clinched the first. But between Milwaukee, New York, Orlando, Cleveland, and Indianapolis, so between 2 and 6, they are separated by 2.5 games.
That's a log jam.
And you said it yourself. The West is just as dangerous. Between spots 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, and 3, it's separated by a game. So nothing is set. Like people are like, "Oh, the playoffs are going to be amazing." They're amazing because nothing is set. Nothing is set at this point. The only 2 spots that have been the only 3 spots that have been clinched in the East is we know Boston will take the 1, and then Chicago and Atlanta are playing in the 9-10 playing game. That's it. Nothing else is set at this point.
The doggone Bulls.
It's crazy. And then also, I think what made the season fun too, who had the Orlando Magic even being relevant?
Not me.
And we're talking about the postseason and the playoffs. I think they've been a team, and of course, young, going back to young talent.
I think another team.
You look at it. How many young teams are there? We're talking about OKC. We're talking about Orlando. We're talking about
Indiana.
The
Pacers, right?
Sacramento is still a fairly young team, and they're in the playoff. It's incredible because you get, and I'm a 90s kid at heart, so you think about the 90s team, a team without a key leader, a team without that constant, consistent winning culture never made it to the playoffs. And this year, there's so much young talent. There's so much of that raw, just physicality with this basketball season this year it's been nothing's been predicted. Like I think you might have gotten Boston being one.
We all probably had Boston, right? But nothing.
But at the same time, at the way Boston has done, when the season started, if you told me Milwaukee would have been one, I would have believed it. If you had told me
they were for a minute,
right?
If you would have told me Cleveland would have had a shot at one, I would have been like, maybe. But the way Boston ran away with it, and that. Another reason is why I'm saying Boston they're burning themselves out during the regular season. How fresh are they going to be for the playoffs?
Right.
It's a big question. Yeah. Because I think another team that, like, even in the West, I know the Phoenix Suns, right? Another team we're still questioning because a lot of people had them high, right? I mean, we thought, Bradley Beal, guy who I covered a lot here in DC, him going to Phoenix, we thought that was going to be the missing piece in question. And you see now, of course, Bradley Beal had been injured a lot, unfortunately. In Phoenix hadn't found a consistent, rhythm, and they struggled more, right? And they're another team that's kind of fighting and Golden State too. I think we're entering this new era of basketball where we look at the West and we're so used to Golden State, kind of being that standard. But Clay, Draymond, and stuff are all in very different positions now. Look what happens this season. Draymond, we're just trying to make sure the man doesn't get ejected. And, Steph has had a heavy load on himself, trying to keep. But Golden State has also had to rely on young players to try to make up for things, So I think it's been a really interesting season. If anything, I think this is good for the NBA, though, because it really has been some anomalies, that have happened. That, again, I don't think none of us could have. Like you said, I think most of us probably had Denver back, right? Because Denver won last year, which is the only right thing to do. Most of us had the Celtics and the Bucks, I would say. But I think everything else was fair game.
Now, let me ask you this. It's already come out that LeBron is not going to re-sign. He's going to opt out with the Lakers after the season's over. If he does, where do you see him going? And does where Bronny gets drafted have a point? Will he go join Bronny?
Will Bronny get drafted, though?
Oh, my gosh. Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't see Bronny getting drafted, Will.
I don't either.
He's not going to get drafted.
Let's be honest. Bronny probably, we all know Bronny again, and we all love LeBron James, but we all know Bronny, what he's done in college, right, is not draft worthy in the NBA. It's just, like, if anything, I think a lot of us are still hoping Bronny stays healthy right after the whole health scare that he had this year. I think, if anything, again, remember, that's why he also declared for the transfer portal. I think Bronny knows, right? Look, I think Bronny knows, and I think this is actually kind of right. I think if he really wants to get more experience, either he has to stay in college or do the overseas leap. Because if he does go to the NBA, he'll be in a G League team. He'll probably get lost in the system. Will he make an NBA roster potentially in the future? Sure, because his dad is, let's be honest, that might potentially happen. Look, Mac McClung has made some NBA rosters. I'm just saying, like, you can make an NBA roster. But all that to say, I think I did not like the decision by Bronny, but I also get it. He's in a unique anomaly situation where, again, your dad is the greatest basketball player right now.
Not to me.
On earth right now? I'm talking right now playing in the league. Who would you say is the greatest?
His other son, Bryce.
Oh, yeah. Talented.
Yeah. I think that's the dude.
I thought you meant LeBron is the greatest, but no, I agree. The other Bryce, I think, right? He's talented, very talented. I think, but to be fair, I think Bronny has a lot of pressure on him, right? When you're the oldest, you're kind of expected.
Oh yeah. Now, me and you have been going back and forth for a couple of years now. I never asked you this question, and if Dan was here, that would be kind of fun.
Yeah.
But MJ or LeBron, who's your GOAT?
Let me tell you, I think I'm old school. I am an MJ girl. I just got to be honest with y'all. Like, I had a chance to watch MJ when he was here in DC, and I know that was the later part of his career. But
still great. Still great.
Still better than, look, I would like to have him on the Wizards now.
Oh yeah.
But all that to say, I think, MJ changed the game. Like, it's just, we would run to TV. It literally fly. MJ was that dude. I love LeBron. Obviously, I think he's the greatest right now in the game. But to me, I'm a 90s kid. MJ was my GOAT.
Yes.
So I did want to go back to LeBron real quick. Could it be that because if Bronny doesn't get drafted, Bronny basically controls where he could ask to get signed. It could be a power play by LeBron to be like, hey, I'll come to you, but you got to sign me and my son.
Yeah.
So it could be. And I look at this as kind of like a ball situation where LeVar wanted to pull the strings and get all his kids to play together.
Lost.
But
Never
you
lost.
can't. I have my own opinions about LeVar.
Never lost.
But I think that could work in Bronny's favor, because if Bronny comes out of USC and let's say he goes to the transfer portal, he could go to a place where he's worse off than he was in USC.
True.
So by going into the draft and working with his dad, who knows A, how to coach him, who knows B, what Bronny brings to the table better than any coach would, because he's been training him for all those years. That could work in Bronny and LeBron's credit. So
right, so he didn't necessarily have to get drafted, to your point.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. But I will say this, being a 90s kid, absolutely. If I hear that NBA on NBC,
Oh my gosh.
Best
you
theme
knew
ever.
Michael was on TV.
Best
The
theme
love
ever.
came up, and you're sitting at the TV like MJ, MJ,
Yes.
MJ.
Yes, like that was
Loved
our
it.
childhood.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yep.
funny though, because like if you ask young kids now, you know who their goat is, you don't hear MJ. And so,
No.
what is
So
this?
I think
Gen Z, I guess.
I think what LeBron brings to the table that Michael didn't is the longevity. I mean, LeBron's been playing for 20 years, and I will
13
say this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say this to Dan, and Dan has got me to kind of change my opinion on it over the last year. Is what LeBron brings to the table is the knowledge of the game.
Mhm.
Maybe not. I mean, he knows more about the game, I think, than Michael does. So he's able to pick up and kind of read the factors in the game. Maybe that Michael didn't. But LeBron can kind of pick that out. LeBron's also been in the league for 22 years.
Wow.
I don't think Michael at the longevity that, because again, it was a more physical era of basketball.
Right.
I don't see Michael being as dominant in year 20, 21, 22 that LeBron has been, because LeBron is so much bigger. But I think when it comes down to the sheer who brings what to the table, Michael had that dog, and I don't see LeBron having it to the extreme that Michael had. So, and kind of like that final 5 minutes of the game, I'm going to pick my MJ 10 times out of 10. I think when you look at the physicality that they bring to the game, I think Michael is slightly over the edge of LeBron. I think when you look at the knowledge of the game, LeBron has the edge over Michael. So, I mean, it's at that point, you're kind of picking straws. I think every 90s kid who watches basketball will say LeBron. I think everybody after 2002, 2003 will say LeBron. And it's just the generation that they were brought up. And I think they're both great. Would I love to see like a past Michael in his prime, 96, 97 Bulls against, we'll say 2016 LeBron? I think that would be a hell of a series.
That would
Let's
be
make it
fun.
happen.
But like you said, it was a whole different game, like so much more physical, right? I mean, we had true centers as well when MJ.
Yes. Yes.
Okay,
yes.
so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Who is your, I'm guessing, I'm going to say just stick strictly to the 90s. Who is your favorite center in the 90s?
Oh my gosh. Let me finish this real quick and then I'm going to answer.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
So with MJ, I think the other thing too, I think people forget with MJ, let's remember, I mean, he loved basketball, but what was his other love? Baseball. So all that to say, I think LeBron should get credit. I think MJ should get credit more so because I think he was able to give basketball his all again when he had other passions and love. Like LeBron is a basketball guy, loves basketball, loves watching basketball. And matter of fact, shout out to LeBron too for tweeting about the women's game and Don Staley and giving greatness. Like,
there you go.
I absolutely love that LeBron does that because I think he's one of the biggest advocates, for women's sports. The same way that he rest in peace, Kobe Bryant. When Kobe right, the same way. So I think that matters. But I think also with MJ, again, I think people, it's easy to say LeBron too, because again, we didn't have the technology we have now. Like, could you imagine, like, everything LeBron does now, what happens? It goes viral on social media. We're talking about it. Yes. I do think that does a disservice and a discredit. But like, I think when you really watch MJ and you talked about LeBron's size, for MJ to do what he did at his size, like no one can sit here and tell me, that MJ does not deserve to be a GOAT. But I also understand, like, it's just different eras, right? Because if you ask people older than us, they might see somebody else other than Jordan. And I hear that a lot, right?
My grandfather would tell you all day long, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
I was going to say that, and that's who older people will say. But Ando, could we dispute against that? No, I think at his time, I mean,
and I mean, again,
for what he did.
Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, I think, is the best 1-2 tandem that you can go on. I think when you say who's the best rivalry in the NBA, you got to say Bird and Magic, Lakers and Celtics of the 80s.
Because what they did,
what they brought to the table, for sure. Favorite center.
You guys are taking me back. Okay, so we said the 90s. I think we had talked about Shaq earlier. So obviously,
to me, it's got to be one or two people, either Shaq or Hakeem.
Hakeem is in there. Oh, you have a different one?
I'm going to say Hakeem number one. As much as I love Shaq, Shaq was not as dominant in the early 90s as he was in the 2000s. Like, I mean, if you take his Laker dominance against his Magic dominance, even without Kobe, I think Shaq was a much better player on the Lakers than he was a Magic. Do not get me wrong. I absolutely love the Shaq commercials that he did as a Magic.
Those were good.
Beautiful. But I will agree with you. I think Hakeem is number one.
And then you have
Shaq is a very close number two. And then I think you have to split hairs between Patrick Ewing and David Robinson. I will give an honorable mention to Alonzo Mourning, But I think Alonzo Mourning, a lot of his game was built off of Larry Johnson taking a lot of the pressure off of him. So that allowed him to dominate the game the way that he did. And then obviously the Heat and Knicks rivalry between him and Johnson. Oh, loved it.
And the only reason why, and people always ask me, the only reason why I put Hakeem over Shaq, if you look at his footwork and the way he can play, and the way he can play on the perimeter, the way he can handle the basketball, all this back to the basket moves. I mean, no one is physically dominant as Shaq, and don't get me wrong, no one is physically as dominant as him. But for someone who could move like that, back to the basket and be consistent, I got to give it to Hakeem.
Where's Shaq going to kill you at, Will? Shaq is going to kill you in the paint. So what did Hakeem do? Hakeem kept himself out of the paint where Shaq is dangerous. I'm going to hit you from mid-range. I'm going to, sweet. Here's my, there it is. The little, well, I forgot.
Hakeem was just different. Yeah. I mean, it's like, that's why I hate we don't have true centers anymore, because that was one of the best things to watch. Like these guys, this is actually interesting. I'm curious to know your thoughts. So, if Zach Edey were to be drafted in the NBA, do you think he would help bring back true center?
Well, I'll let you answer that first.
It's positionless basketball right now.
Yeah.
But with his size and his strength, and the fact that you have Wembanyama doing his stage, Chet Holmgren doing his thing, I think he might be the one to bring that center position back. He might be the one.
I will agree. And actually, Victor was who I was going to kind of picture him with. I mean, because you got Nikola Jokic, right? I mean, and I think the way you look at him, and he pairs up so well with Giannis, but Giannis is kind of more of that 4 than he is the 5. Giannis really isn't a true center. Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people make that comparison with Durant. With his size, I see him as a small forward, but a lot of people are like, no, with his length and size, he's got to be the 5. So I think Edey fits well. Definitely, the post game is kind of dead, and that's sad. I like thinking of guys like Dwight Howard. I like thinking of guys like Shaq and Hakeem. I want that guy in the middle to be like, hey, I'm going to sit in the paint. I'm going to rebound. I'm going to be the one to tip in. This makes me sad.
It's just strange. That's why I was asking, because I think Wembanyama obviously does help that, but of course he's just talented.
The dude, look at, he's like a super long green bean.
He does everything.
Yep.
He does everything.
I need a step stool and a ladder to be able to touch the net, and this dude's just like, over the rim.
It's so easy. But I think the reason why Edey's interesting, because he has the weight, right, that Wembanyama doesn't have. And he really does have to be and because he's not as fast, I think Wembanyama doesn't get enough credit either for his athleticism. I do think if Edey were to play in the NBA again, I think he would have to play that true center role.
He would.
So I think he could potentially, not saying he's going to be great at it, but I think he could bring back that kind of, like, if I'm a coach, I know I need to put him in a true center.
He's my guy who's gobbling up 20. He's like a older kind of version of Kevin Love. I may be able to get him to get 14, 16 points, but the rebounds are where I want him.
The rebounds will be there. He'll be perfect for fantasy basketball. He'll be perfect.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Now you brought him up, Ando, Dwight Howard. It's criminal that man not in the top 75. It's criminal.
I agree.
It's just criminal. He should be, no matter what you think about him off the court or wherever that may be.
That part, you have to separate the two.
You got to separate that.
Yeah, because people do it all the time with MJ. MJ had a lot of off-court issues, especially there in the middle of the 90s, but nobody talks about it because of how great he is. I think the flack that Dwight gets is he basically mirrored he mirrored Shaq's career up until he couldn't mesh with that Lakers team. And instead of, hey, I'm going to re-sign, I'm going to work, I'm going to build, he took the easy ticket out to Houston. And I think that's where it kind of derailed his career from that.
Because it didn't go well. I mean, even remembering here in DC, like it just wasn't the same, with Dwight. And so all that to say, like you said,
I'm sorry, when I think of Howard, you got to wear number 12. Like Houston, like LA Lakers, like Orlando Magic. As soon as he went to Washington and started wearing 21, it's like
different Dwight Howard.
And then in Atlanta, he wears number 8. It's like, no, sorry, bud.
No, Dwight Howard again, a great player, but I do think the off the court antics though.
I'm happy he
put it with him.
I'm finally happy he won a ring with the Lakers, though, even if it was a bubble ring.
Even
Yes.
with the bubble ring. Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah.
Very happy.
Now that because it was weird because we've seen weirder stuff in the past in the NBA throughout its history. We saw Akeem Olajuwon as a Raptor. That was just crazy to me.
Those were, and
That
I mean,
was
you could make
crazy
the
to me.
same argument of MJ being in a Wizards jersey was weird.
Right.
That was weird.
Yep.
It was.
I mean,
It was.
I grew to love it eventually because my favorite player was still playing basketball. But I mean, it's weird to see him in blue instead of red. So. I mean, I think a lot of people said the same thing about LeBron after 7 seasons in Cleveland and then him to go to Miami. Yeah. I mean, it's culture shock, man.
Yeah. Now, Kelsey, last we talked, you got to refresh my memory a little bit. You were a Commanders fan.
No, everybody gets this wrong. Okay, so I covered and worked for them, right? So,
okay.
And I live in DC, but I am like Angel. I'm Maryland born and bred, so I am a Ravens fan.
There we go.
Covers the Commanders.
Sorry.
There we go.
Sorry.
There we go.
Yes, this season was hurtful because they should.
Sorry. Sorry.
They should have been in Las Vegas. And Lamar Jackson, we trust.
Yes, they would have ran the football. But speaking of running the football, do you think Derrick Henry's going to make that difference for Baltimore?
Ooh, so okay, Baltimore, you know, it's funny because they were saying it in DC too, but ground and pound. So Baltimore for a long time, you think about the great running backs, right, that have come through the Ravens, right? You know, obviously you have Ray Rice. More recently, you know, Gus Edwards, who, you know, the Gus bus, as we would call him. Hill, J.K. Dobbins, Hill, you know, who again got hurt and injured. And Baltimore is better when they have a run game, right? And then of course, the person that really broke my heart that got injured that I was a big fan of was Keaton Mitchell, who was hitting at the right time for Baltimore. So all that to say, and then also let's remember Lamar Jackson, you have to put into that too, because he can run. So all that to say, you know, I do think somebody like a Derrick Henry is great because I mean, so at the time, Baltimore's defense, when they're not great, it's because they couldn't either the secondary couldn't block the long passes or they couldn't block the run up front. Derrick Henry was one of those guys who had success against Baltimore. And so now to have him on that Baltimore team, I do think it will make a difference. I think Baltimore has kind of done what they needed to do to have a strong offensive line. And so all of to say, I do think Derrick Henry can make a difference. Now, again, I will miss all of the different running back options that Baltimore had, but I do think Derrick Henry still does have something to offer to Baltimore to create more. Again, I think Baltimore, what hurt them in that last game you showed the Kansas City Chiefs hat, they went away from the run. And their offense wasn't dynamic enough. I could predict everything that was about to happen. I do think with Derrick Henry, I do think that there's going to be a difference with what Baltimore is going to be able to play call and really do in terms of the offense, again, to give Lamar Jackson some breathing room and hopefully some creativity on plays.
Do you think the first thing they look at in the draft is another receiver at some point to go with Zay Flowers?
Yeah, because I mean, think about it. Zay Flowers was great. You know, I'm still old enough to remember how he should have held on to that football. You know, and that one still hurts. But, you know, you think about like Hollywood Brown and Zay Flowers. The Ravens always do a great job in the draft. It seems like finding these young, talented receivers that a lot of people feel like are undersized and won't contribute, but that are able to contribute in the draft. You know, you think about who Baltimore lost. You know, OBJ is obviously, I think is he still a free agent? I think he's still a free agent.
I don't think
he's still a free agent, but I'm hearing that he's talking about maybe going to the Dolphins.
Interesting. Okay, but you lose him, and let's be honest, OBJ had some sparks for the Ravens, but you know, didn't have what the Ravens thought they would be getting from him. Obviously, they paid him. And I think Baltimore, again, they had weapons on offense, but I think it was the consistency. Like Zay Flowers was luckily again able to be a huge star for that Baltimore offense. But I do think another young receiver, again, to spread the football field, because Lamar, I mean, he can throw the deep ball. He has shown that multiple times.
Yes.
But I think, you know, we know Zay Flowers' game now. Would love another speedy youngster. And I do think Baltimore can get that through the draft. I also high on my priority list for Baltimore, some of their defensive pieces that they lost. If I'm Baltimore, I'm really looking at some of I'm going defense line this draft because defense is going to look a lot different.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but they still have Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely too, right?
Oh my God. And Mark Andrews.
Those are two guys that I think will definitely, especially with Andrews being hurt midway through the season, Likely really stepped up as that kind of safety valve for Lamar. So I think if you do, I don't think the Ravens should go after receiver. I'm actually with Kelsey on this. I think the Ravens should go defense. I think you have enough on offense between Mitchell coming back, between Derrick Henry. Yes, you did lose Gus Edwards, but you said it yourself that you have Zay Flowers, then you have Edwards and Likely.
Yes.
Pick yourself there's plenty of receivers in the draft. Pick him up second, third, fourth at the latest, but focus on defense. I would say with as tough as that NFC North is, you got to focus on the front four and then work your way back. So find somebody to help out in the interior of the line. I think your linebacker crew is solid, except I hate to say this, that you lost Queen.
Patrick Queen and Roquan Smith were such a great tandem.
Yes, they were.
It was.
So you need to get
somebody
to fill in. You need to get somebody to fill in Queen's shoes. Maybe not an immediate difference maker, but somebody who will pick up from Roquan and eventually fill that Queen spot. I like the secondary of the Ravens. I don't think you need to make any too many changes there. But I'm with Kelsey. Focus on defense first. Get a defensive lineman. And then in your second, third, or fourth round, focus on your pieces on offense.
Yeah, because remember, this AFC North division, you're going against a Steelers team that bulked up on offense, right?
Yeah.
So
not to mention defense.
No more,
right?
Not
to mention defense. They did
not to mention defense. Steelers, Mike Tomlin's crew looks good. Looks good on paper. And then you get a healthy Joe Burrow back for Cincy, right?
And let's not forget Cleveland. Cleveland made some moves too. So
I'm not the AFC North is tough. Essentially,
I'm not a fan of Deshaun, but I do like Cleveland. I wish Cleveland would move off of Deshaun, but it's guaranteed money, so
it's hard.
Let me ask you a question.
Is in the AFC. Sorry, Will. I'd say, and then remember what the Texans have done, right? So
the
Texans last year, but all of a sudden you're looking at the Texans differently now. And remember, that was actually a closer game, I think, than folks thought at the beginning, right, when they were playing the Texans. So all that to say,
because it was close in the front. What, it was like 10-6, 10-7 at the end of the first half.
Yeah,
So,
it was like,
and I think a lot of that again had to do with John Harbaugh's been in that situation. DeMeco Ryans hasn't as a head coach. So the Ravens are just kind of like, hey, we're going to keep playing our game. And that's when the Ravens were smart. They didn't move away from the run game. They let Lamar kind of play as he did. And then the Texans were kind of like, man, we made it, but we lost. And then, of course, the Ravens kind of played the other end of that. It's like, hey, man, we should have run the ball more against the Chiefs. Yeah. All right, let's go air it out some more. 3 more throws, 3 more. Oh, yeah.
Now, I do want to bring up one more team, and then we'll get you on out of here. Okay. I do want to bring up the Dallas Cowboys. Ooh. There's some rumor and intrigue going on with the Cowboys.
CD? Are we talking CD?
Yeah, CD.
Been hearing that all day.
I'm sorry, Will. Is this the same Cowboys team that said they were all in for the offseason and they signed 2 players?
Yes, sir. They said they were all in, man. All in.
Jerry Jones all in my ass, man. That dude just needs to lay down and go to sleep. I'm going to say my high five me, kid. High five. Wait, why ain't nobody high fiving me?
I think.
Oh, we lost some bitch.
I mean, it's just crazy to me because half your team left in free agency. Your running back left.
Yep.
CD seems like we're not going to see him.
Lost Dan Quinn.
Yeah, Dan Quinn's gone. I mean,
Michael Parsons is on the outs now.
Oh yeah, seems to be on the outs too. What's your forecast for the Dallas Cowboys, so to speak? Do you see them being successful?
I don't ever have high expectations, honestly, for the Cowboys. So last season, obviously, they were great in the regular season. But let's just be honest. I mean, we know we're not going to be talking about them in New Orleans next year, meaning they're not getting to the Super Bowl next year. Nope. I think the Cowboys are figuring themselves out, right? Like, I don't know the identity of the Cowboys. Like, if somebody asked me I don't know it because I think they're still figuring it out. The Cowboys obviously have a lot of questions. You know, CD has been a piece. They need to figure out this thing with Dak, you know, this kind of on and off relationship that they've had.
Oh, yeah.
And I just think they like we say, they don't know who they want to like. They're the person that keeps courting and dating, but they're not ready to give a ring to anybody. And that's an issue and that's a problem. So all that to say, if I'm a Cowboys fan, I am gearing up for a long season.
Oh, yeah.
In the NFC, just because, again, I think, but actually, I guess it's interesting. So you guys know I cover Washington. So I think, you know, before it's like, oh, the Cowboys are going to dominate and win, where now all of a sudden you're kind of looking at the Cowboys like,
I was kind of shocked though that the Commanders that the Commanders let Sam Howell go. I mean, he was all right. He was all right for the first part of the season, but then he fell off for the second half.
So let me ask you this, Will. If you are a starting quarterback, your team has the second overall pick. As the starting quarterback, are you okay to go back on the bench knowing that kid you're picking up with the second overall pick, be it Drake May or Jaden Daniels, are you okay sitting on the bench behind him?
It should be Drake May.
As I'm going to say it like this, if I had my starting role like that and I know I'm not starting, it's going to eat at me, man. I mean, am I going to want to perform? Absolutely. And I don't see Howell starting in Seattle because of what
I
Geno
don't
Smith
either.
has been able
I
to
don't
do.
either. But
I mean,
I think he's the backup safe future. But let me say this. I think Sam Howell, I told everybody tries to say, Kelsey, Sam Howell's going to be the next great thing and blah, blah, blah. I've seen the quarterback carousel in Washington for so long, up close and personal.
Oh, yeah.
And Sam Howell, I saw him in college. All that to say, honestly, I don't think Drake May is the answer. And honestly, I don't think they got rid of Sam Howell because of that either. I think Sam Howell, remember it, and I know the offensive line sucked last year, but anytime you're the most sacked quarterback, he made bad decisions. He held the football too long. And I just think there was a lot, you had receivers, you had folks that were just getting frustrated and irritated, right? Like his time to deliver was up. I don't think Sam Howell was ready. Sam Howell is one I would have actually liked to see be able to sit behind a little bit longer, a quarterback, and really just learn the ins and outs. Because again, I saw a lot of inexperience when he was playing, and I think Washington made the right decision to let him go. Honestly, I would have preferred Taylor Heineke here in Washington still.
Yeah, agreed.
That's just me. All in all to say, I think Drake May is going to be another version of Sam Howell, and you can mark my words on that. I am not sold on him. I'm just not sold on him. I would rather Jaden Daniels, of course. I mean, everyone here would like Caleb Williams because of his ties to the area. I actually don't like a DC kid coming home just because DC is a hard place to play. And unfortunately, the last guy that we had, may he rest in peace, Dwayne Haskins, of course, was the last DC quarterback.
Yes.
We had it again. DC is very hard. DC is a very hard place to play in. There's a lot of high expectations. This new ownership group, right, has a lot to prove because essentially they've talked to fans and want them to believe back into them. I don't think Drake May is that answer. I personally, and honestly, I would even like to see Washington. I know we have Marcus Mariota that they signed. A lot of people have a lot of feelings about Marcus. You guys probably know why. But all in all to say, like, I really would have liked a solid veteran quarterback in Washington. Obviously, I did not get my wish. I'm just not big on, but again, I think the good thing about the quarterback in Washington, look who you're throwing to, especially, I mean, scary Terry McLaurin. Quarterback. That's one of my favorite, like, that's one of the most exciting things, about Washington, that I have in a young stud. But I do think this Washington group, on offense last year, I don't think, again, they knew who their identity was. I do think it's going to be just a brand new, look at the running back group that Washington has now. I think Washington is on to something, but that quarterback piece is going to be so pivotal and so important. And like I said, I saw Sam Howell. I knew it was not going to be the answer. I saw that early on. Again, he had the one good game. I think it was against the Cowboys when he first started. And, Cowboys didn't have their starters. And everyone's like, oh, my gosh. I'm like, calm down. Off the hype, and sure enough, again, I think Sam Howell, I do wish him success, though. I wish him success in Seattle. I think that's actually a better place for him because Geno Smith, you can look at the timeline. I don't know, we don't know where that's going. So I do think that's a place where maybe, he can have some success and hopefully, continue his quarterback dreams.
He could run behind Geno. That's a good point.
And it doesn't hurt that he has DJ Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to throw to. And then,
kind of nice.
And then Jackson Smith. Real quick, Kelsey, I do want to ask you about Caleb Williams because Will and I have our feelings about Caleb. Do you think Caleb will be the next best quarterback?
It's hard, right? I mean, because think about it. When we look at the great quarterbacks in the game now, we're talking about guys who weren't the top picks, right? I mean, that's what's so great about Patrick Mahomes. That's what's so great about Lamar Jackson, right? It's hard to be, that guy. So all in all, I think Caleb Williams can put the work in to be great. I'm not ready to say he's going to be the next greatest quarterback, just from what I've seen on a college level. Yeah. And then if I'm honest too, if he's going to the Bears, I also don't know if I'm ready to say he's I don't a great quarterback in Chicago. He's talented, has the arm.
Oh, I'm not joking that he has the talent. But when I watch his demeanor on the sideline, especially when his team is down or he makes a bad throw, there are those quarterbacks in college that you just kind of look at. Yes. They're sitting on the sideline and it's okay. Yeah. I made a mistake. Shake it off and I'm going to go. I don't see that with Caleb. What I see is a little bit of, I hate using the word pouting, but he pouts a lot on the sideline, or it's, man, you should have ran this route and I threw it to where it thought. It's just, when I look at Caleb and kind of the demeanor and his structure, I don't see the leadership that's necessary to be able to take a football team over. Had Chicago kept Justin and let Caleb go behind Justin, not that Justin is the answer right now, especially not in Chicago. Right. But I think Caleb is the quarterback. I think that needs 6, 8, 12 weeks to an entire season behind the bench. Give himself time to learn the playbook and put yourself in a position where, hey, I'm willing to put in the work. If you need me to start due to injury, I got you. But straight off the bat, I think if Chicago starts him week 1, this season is not going to turn out well for him or Chicago because they're putting all the chips on him.
So
my issue is different. My issue is different. My issue, when was the last Chicago Bears quarterback that they actually built up homegrown?
That's what I'm saying. If he's going to Chicago, it's going to be so hard for him to succeed there. And again, this is not saying.
Hold on, well, let me look through my notes.
Nobody.
It's hard. If he can do it, he'd be the anomaly. But to Ando's point, I actually would have liked to see Chicago. I think they let go of the Justin Field train. You know,
right?
I thought they let go of it too quickly, and for nothing.
Too early.
Yeah.
Too early.
I gotta say though,
some cookies and some Cheetos. You let him go.
But Pittsburgh could be on the mind with him backing up Russell Wilson.
Pittsburgh is so smart. I mean, you have Russell Wilson has to prove himself this year.
I will say
this.
Justin
Fields has to do the same.
I will say this for our podcast viewers. Tony 7 quoted this like a month before it happened. That the Steelers were going to trade for Fields, and then they were going to sign Russell Wilson. I got to shout it out. He was right when he said it, and then it happened.
I think he's a quarterback. I mean, look, I know offense to Kenny Pickett, but I knew he was not the thing. Yeah. Like, what made Pittsburgh so good, and Phil, how you feel about Ben Roethlisberger, but and his prime. I mean, Pittsburgh does well when they have at least a solid quarterback.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Great,
well,
because they have so much built around it.
Look at their team last year. They didn't even have a consistent starting quarterback. They had Pickett for like 10 weeks, and then they had Trubisky for 3.
Rudolph.
And then they had Mason Rudolph, and they still made the playoffs. So
which was wild.
They know. And I'm not saying that Russell Wilson is as great as he was in Seattle, but if you can get 9-10 wins out of a competent Russell Wilson, if we get the Russell Wilson from Denver last year and put him on Pittsburgh has a chance to win the AFC North. I honestly believe that if you get Russell Wilson, who has his head on straight, ready to play, doesn't commit to turnovers.
Sean Payton and his mental.
Exactly.
Yes.
And I think Mike Tomlin is one of those guys who will not baby him. He'll be like, look, Russ, you messed up. You got to fix it, man. You got to fix it.
But in a respectful way, not embarrass him.
Exactly. I mean, and I'm trying to, Mike Tomlin talks to his players a certain way where it's kind of like oh shit, I got to fix that, man. Oh boy.
It's kind of like the Don Staley eyes that she gives her players.
Exactly.
They didn't even say anything.
Now, guys, we got a question in the chat. Real quick. KW, what's up, man? Thank you for showing. Thank you for coming to the stream. We appreciate you, bro. He wants to know, did anybody watch the UFL this weekend?
I have not, but I will say there is a kicker in Michigan. I don't know his name, but this kid has booted 2 60-plus yard field goals in the USL and made them both. One from 64 and one from 62.
Somewhere Jason Tucker is listening to this show.
Right?
Yes,
and I will have you know that 64-yarder that he hit the game winner was in Ford Field, the same place where Justin Tucker made that
crazy kick against the Lions.
That's number one. Number two, I think based off of the fan interaction, St. Louis, you need to get an NFL team again. Roger Goodell, I know you're not going to listen. Take your high horse and get the hell out of here.
Yes.
But St. Louis needs another football team. The economy there needs it. They're showing support for the UFL team, for the Battlehawks. St. Louis needs another NFL team.
I agree.
And one more fun fact, Will, before we go. We had a solar eclipse that happened yesterday.
Yes.
That lasted 4 minutes and 26 seconds. I will have you know, being a Jets hater myself, that was 3 times longer than Aaron Rodgers' playing career with the Jets.
Ouch.
That hurts. That hurts.
I had to, Will. I had to.
Oh, man, that hurts. All right, Kelsey, tell people where they can find you, your social media handles, and what you got going on.
Well, thank you so much again for having me. My website, easiest way to get me, KelseyNicoleNelson.com. I'm on social media, The Real K Nelson, Facebook, LinkedIn, just Kelsey Nicole Nelson. I'm a little bit everywhere. So, talking now, of course, a lot of WNBA and football. Also doing baseball coverage with MLB Bro, which has been so much fun to do.
Wow, okay.
Baseball season. And especially now, a lot of my time, so I'm launching a brand new inaugural sports course at George Washington University. So a lot of my time is going to that for the students, which has been really fun and exciting, but a lot of work, but super excited to have my first cohort of sports students in the fall. So it's been really fun broadcasting and teaching. And then of course, if you're in the DMV area, you'll probably see me around the area doing a lot of hosting of events. So it's super fun, blessed and thankful. And of course, I get to see fun guys like you guys. So thank you so much as always.
Yes.
Great to meet you.
Thank you for coming on. Thank you for coming on. We do appreciate you. Ando, you got any final thoughts?
About the podcast or just in general?
Just in general.
God is great, beer is good, and I'll drink to that. No, this has been for real, guys. This has been kind of fun. This is why I enjoy sports.
Wait, kind of fun. Kelsey is very fun.
This was fun.
I retract my statement, Mrs. Nelson. It has been absolutely amazing. I am glad I filled in with Will. I am glad to be Will's co-host. But no, I mean this has been fun. I really enjoy it, and I hope we'll see you again on a future Sports Report podcast.
We definitely got to get you on with the crew. I don't know though. I don't know. Seven might. I don't know about Dan though.
Dude, Dan would be fun. Her and Dan talking about MJ and LeBron.
Yeah,
that's a two beer minimum conversation that they're gonna have.
Yeah,
they can go off for 30 minutes, and I will enjoy every second.
That'd be a good one. That'd be a good one.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody.
Thanks, fellas.
Thank you for coming on, Kelsey. We do appreciate taking that time. Real quick, KW, I appreciate you coming through in the chat room. And if there's nothing else, we will be back this coming Monday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, same bat time, same bat channel. Thank you for tuning into this edition of the Sports Report. We'll see you next week.
And this is where I say